Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mitch, and I am going to walk you through synthesis. Big new skill that we're going to be learning, but it's very much related to skills we've already been working on. So we're just sort of building another layer of our house, so to speak. But when someone asks you to synthesize in an English class, what they're asking for is they want you to see connections across readings. So whether those connections are the two readings agree with each other, or the two readings disagree with each other, or maybe it's not about agreement or disagreement. The two or three readings all talk about food culture in the same way, or all three of the readings talk about the environmental ramifications of food culture. So it could be that the readings are talking to each other, or it could just that you're seeing commonality in the topics that they discuss. So I think Venn diagrams are really useful to visualize here, because seeing these connections, you're looking at the place where this circle, and that one, all of them overlap. And this is the only place where all three of them do. So it's helpful to see that, I think, because you can feel really overwhelmed when you're trying to write about the connections that you see across the things you're reading. You can feel like you have to write these long summaries about all three of the readings, so you have to bring in lots and lots of ideas. And actually, that's never possible, because each argument is always going to be different, even if both authors are talking about the same topic, even if both authors think the same way about the topic. They're going to have different evidence, different supporting ideas. One author is going to see one thing, another author is going to see another, right? So you can rest assured that really you're looking at a tiny part of each of these readings. Looking ahead, you're going to write a synthesis essay. So it says, for our purposes, you'll be drawing evidence from two different arguments to agree or disagree with Pollan or Friedman, whoever you want to work with. You can work with Pollan the whole time. If you don't like Pollan's argument or you like Friedman's, you can work with him. But you need to choose two of your peers' narrative essays, or you could choose one peer essay and use Foyer's narrative essay about his grandmother and his vegetarianism. Whatever essays you think will allow you to see some overlap, right? So your choices in these two readings is which two can you connect with Pollan closely? And again, there's lots of stuff that Foyer talks about that Pollan doesn't. And that's okay. The stuff that Foyer talks about that Pollan doesn't, that's in this area. And you forget about it. There's probably stuff in your peer essay that Foyer doesn't talk about. And that's okay. You just forget that. You just want this part of all three circles. Your argument lives here. And finding that part, finding the connections, is the real individual thinking that you're doing in writing this type of essay. So don't try to argue what you want to argue. So you're not so let me be clear. So you're not looking for essays that allow you to say Pollan's right because you want to say he's right. You're not looking for essays because you want to say Pollan's wrong, and these let you say Pollan's wrong. You want to look for essays where you can combine all three, where it just looks like the two new ones you're bringing in are related to each other on one or two key points. And then those two are related to Pollan on the same two or three key points. So let the evidence, so that specifically the evidence here would be the connections you're seeing across the articles. Let that evidence limit whether you agree or disagree with Pollan or Friedman. So you may want to agree with Friedman, but the evidence you're finding is making you disagree. The connections you're finding, you can only find ones that let you just then disagree. Your evidence matters that much. You may want to disagree with Pollan, or you may want to agree with Pollan, but you just keep seeing connections across readings that suggest he's not right. So it's important to let your evidence shape your agreement or disagreement, even if you feel strongly about it, about wanting to go one way or the other. So how do you do this? Because it can be really overwhelming, really overwhelming. But remember, you're just looking at that tiny space where all three circles overlap. So this is one way. There's lots of ways to do it. And if this way doesn't work, don't stress. Contact me or try it on your own. What do you think will work for you? Go for it. But you could pick out an assertion of Pollan's or Friedman's that you can connect to your two chosen sources. And then type or write out 2 quotes from each source that you can connect with the chosen assertion. Type or write out some notes below explaining the connection. So this is asking you to focus on quotes, right? Specific sentences. And that's going to help you from getting overwhelmed because these essays are comprised of thousands of sentences, right? But you're just looking at probably per essay, maybe 6 sentences from each one. So the rest you can ignore. You don't have to worry about. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. I'll hide that so you can see it better. So this is the assertion of Pollan's that I think I can connect across 2 sources. The undertow of nutritionism is powerful. Much nutrition science qualifies as reductionist science, focusing as it does on individual nutrients rather than on whole foods or dietary patterns. So I think I can connect this idea of nutritionism to, this is a fake paper by Kermit T. Frog. It is sugar, not all carbs in general, that is making so many people sick. So this is focusing on an individual nutrient in this quote. So these are connected, these 2 quotations, but this quote disagrees with that quote. So when you're connecting, sometimes it's helpful to think about, do these 2 sources challenge the other source? In this case, I'm going to say at least this quote does. This quote will help me disagree with Pollan's assertion because Kermit T. Frog argues the opposite about nutritionalism. And then I made up a student, Andre. Even though I miss the blissful sweetness of marshmallow fluff or a gold Twinkie, I don't regret my family sugar habit, and neither does my body. Don't regret kicking my family sugar habit, neither does my body. So this quote also helps me disagree with Pollan. As my peer tells a story about reversing his diabetes diagnosis by dumping sugar, even though his food culture was soaked with sugar, right? So this is about sugar. This is about sugar. This is about individual nutrients, of which sugar could be one. And the writer's going to use this last quote to say, you know, focusing on one nutrient helped Andre not get diabetes. So sometimes you do need to focus on just one nutrient. And this is going to help disagree too. And again, so really this in this example, I thought, oh, this is about sugar and this is about sugar. That's 2 connections. But both of these are in contrast with this idea, and that's okay. but maybe I like Pollen's argument personally. Maybe I want his argument to be true. And his argument can still be true even if your evidence disagrees with him. So let your evidence point you in the direction you're going to. Don't start by deciding you want to agree or disagree. Find connections and see what those connections teach you. One topic to rule them all, right? Nutritionalism equals sugar equals. So just this little part of the circle. Lots of the other pollen is not present. That's okay. Yep. So after you've made these connections, then you write your essay. You cannot write your essay as you're looking for these connections, or your essay won't make sense. So you don't have to do this. It's a good idea to do something like this, where you're pulling out really specific quotes that are clearly connected, but then you're being clear about how they're connected. So this is all I want us to worry about for now, because we're going to spend some time working on the synthesis. You're going to be practicing peer reviewing. There'll be lots of time to understand it. But if you're really, really confused, you definitely should contact me as soon as you can. For now, if you understand that synthesis is finding and describing the connections across readings, you're good to go. You don't right now have to think really hard about what your synthesis essay itself is going to be about. Just know that for this week, you're practicing the skill of connection making across 3 different arguments. So thanks as always for listening. I am going to sign off.